Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, Spiritual Experience. Hope you guys are done with all your turkey and all your stuffing. And so it's been a while since we've had a guest. Not because people aren't worthy, it's because people are lazy. Either way, I've been chasing this young lady down for a couple of months, and I finally got her in the Cobra clutch. And she's here with us today. And I'm very excited to get to know her more than peripherally. And everybody say hello to Tapu. Tapu, say hello.
Hey, everyone.
Nice. Okay, Tapu, first things first. Where are you from?
Where am I from? I am from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Suburbs of Philadelphia. And came to New York back in 94. And
It's a different New York.
Yeah, much different New York. And have been here ever since, pretty much in the same hood in Brooklyn.
What was it like, let's take a step back, what was it like growing up in PA?
Well, I kind of grew up a little all over the place. I mean, my early childhood was in India and then a little bit in Philadelphia in the city. And then my teenage years were in the suburbs. And I can tell you, I was not happy to be in the suburbs after having a early childhood and, you know, a very multicultural, diverse, you know, kind of different lifestyle. To wind up in the suburbs did not suit me.
Yeah, I mean, because... yeah, it's a fork in the road. You know, what were your parents like trying to say, okay, now we're out of the city, we're going to give you like this better life?
Yeah, exactly. That was the...
Meanwhile, you're like the little pretty brown girl, and it's
exactly. Yeah. Funny you should say that. But yeah, that was, I get, their intentions were good, but they weren't really looking at what I needed. Right. You know, or maybe I did need that. You know, who's to say what if I had stayed in the city where I'd be? You know, a lot of the young girls that I was hanging around with, I mean, we were 9, ended up dropping out of high school and getting pregnant as a teenager. So that could have been my fate too. Who's to say? You know, but
right. Yeah, they weren't trying to hurt you.
They weren't trying to. No, they definitely were not trying to hurt me. But
Are both your parents from India?
No, just my father. And my mother is Polish, white, you know, mixed. And, so they got divorced when I was around 12, so not too long after we arrived in the suburbs. And that's kind of when I started doing drugs, you know. And I had a best friend whose father lived in New York. Her parents were divorced too. So at the age of 12, we would come up to New York, and I was like, I love this place.
Yeah.
You know, and her dad was like really cool. I mean, at least we thought he was really cool because he would give us money and just like let us loose in the city. And we're like 13 years old, you know?
Right. Yeah, because it's like free range kids, but not in the suburbs, like, you know, Manhattan, everywhere. Wow. That's fun. Even though Philadelphia is also a city, but it's not the same.
You needed a car to get into the Philadelphia. It wasn't the same, and we didn't, you know, we couldn't drive. You know, we were underage kids, and the train stops running after like 12 or 1 o'clock. So I didn't really get to go into the city that much because there was that constriction.
Who were you living with?
I was living with my mother in the suburbs.
Could she smell the rebellion?
I don't think you could miss it. There wasn't really... It wasn't. I mean, I think like they got the hint when I went into a mental institution at the age of 13. You
nice.
know, like it wasn't. It was pretty pungent, you know. So yeah, there was that, and then you know, going into rehab at age 16, and yeah, there were some issues, but you know, a lot of that was these places it was kind of like institutions to control me, not necessarily because I was doing so many drugs or anything like that. It was like, how can we how can we make this girl stop rebelling? Let's put her in an institution kind of thing.
Do you have any siblings?
No, I do not. It was just me.
Yeah. So they're like, here we are. We move out to the suburbs and the fuse is lit.
Yeah.
And, I think what happens is, I have something, similar thing, but it's like, adolescence is like fucking, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I had a lot of freedom, like up until I was 12.
Right.
In India, when I lived in India, I was able to run around, do my thing. And in Philadelphia, I had a lot of freedom. I would, what they called a latchkey kid, right? The parents are at work, nobody's around. It was the 70s. Parents in general didn't really pay much attention.
Yeah.
And so to all of a sudden arrive in the suburbs where I'm, all of a sudden have rules. And I also noticed that a lot of the boys their parents didn't put rules on them.
Right.
Like they were able to do whatever they wanted, and for some reason I wasn't, and I thought that wasn't fair.
Do you think it was like a cultural thing that's just like, oh, boys can do whatever and girls need to fucking blah?
Yeah, I do to some extent, at least back then, Yeah,
it's like your perception.
Yeah, I think...
even though it was really going on. It was really happening. Like, yeah, you're like, dude, why can't I do that?
Yeah, or just, it was, I would have appreciated a little more. It's hard to control someone who hasn't been controlled. And, I wasn't raised that way. I was raised very freely. So I guess, my mom had a shift with herself, and maybe she needed to, I don't know. Who knows? It's just the suburbs. It was very homogenous, and I didn't fit in. So
what
I was
about
very
your dad?
happy. He moved to Baltimore, and we didn't really get along. He was also he was kind of like, when he shows up, he wanted to control, and it's like, dude, I haven't seen you in 3 months. Like, I'm not gonna.
Do you know what my favorite color is today?
Yeah, exactly. Do you even know me?
Right.
I'd show up in my punk rock outfit, and he'd be like, wear something different. He wanted me to present myself differently, and I'd be like, do you know me? Because I'm not changing.
Yeah. I'm definitely not changing to that.
Yeah, that's not.
But yeah, that's what I think also is that, that's part of the adolescence train, which is, you're clamoring to find some way to be Yeah.
Yeah.
Then somebody shows up with a bag of weed and some beer and some of this and some of that, and then you're just like,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anything not to be bored.
right.
Really at the end of the day. Kids today, they all have these schedules and things to do, and I really grew up with like nothing going on, and also, I take responsibility for some of that too. Like, I didn't really have a lot of initiative to, to maybe do something more entertaining. Like, I didn't even know there was a tennis club in my town. Maybe I could have played tennis. Maybe I could have, I don't know, done something. But instead, I just chose to get high because that was what was presented. It worked, and it was what was in front of me.
How long were you getting high and drinking before they decided to try and lock you away?
Or
were you like right away like running into trouble with this stuff, or was it gradual?
I think it was. I think they kind of went together. I think I was just, I don't even know. It was so long ago. That's one thing I hate about telling my story, is that I hate talking about like my teenager, because my addiction was basically in my teens, since I got sober at 19. So it's like, oh, who can remember high school? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just remembered that. I don't know. I was agitated all the time.
Yeah.
I'd say that now because
Yeah.
like now I've been, I'm a grown up, but like by normal, like without recovery and without program, without people in my life, I'm agitated. I'm not sad.
Absolutely.
That's my whole thing. Is just like a little bit of I simmer.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you combine that with, again, being a young person.
Yeah.
And then I can see, even in my own story, it was like, I had promise. I was a smart kid. How were you in school?
Yeah, I was okay. I was okay, just okay. I heard a lot. I had so much potential. You know what I mean? Like I heard a lot what an underachiever I was. I was so smart, but yet, but sometimes I really tried to pass the test. Like sometimes I'd really be studying and I still would not do that great. But then like I'd hand in a paper and I'd hit it out of the park. And I remember one time I don't know, I think I did something like I wrote this great paper and this teacher was talking about it or something that made me stood out and I got some attention and like everybody was coming up to me like, congratulations. Like, I'm just like, really? Is it that hard to believe? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just such an anomaly that I did so good that like everyone had to, congratulate me. I'm like, it's really, but it wasn't, so I wasn't very academic, but I did show potential in other ways. Like I would try to be an entrepreneur. Like I'd go and I'd sell cards and I'd, do like little business kind of things. But eventually I stopped even doing that.
Who did you admire?
Madonna, right? 1982.
Right.
Yeah, Madonna, of course. And I didn't really have a lot of like today. There's so much information out there. There's so many books, podcasts, audiobooks, and YouTube, Google. Like there's so much great information. Like I wish this stuff had been around when I was a kid. I could have maybe read a book that might have helped, but I did read, but I didn't read self-help. Like as if anything, like back then, it just wasn't highlighted. Like nobody was reading instructional life kind of books. Like if somebody had turned me on to Dale Carnegie back then, that would have been so useful,
Yeah. I read what did I read? How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Right, Dale Carnegie. Yeah,
that was the only one from him. I read like all these sales.
How old were you when you read it, though?
I don't know. So I was like 17 or 18.
That should be part of the school curriculum, like
right.
For real.
No. Yeah, I was using it. Like, I got a job stealing money on Wall Street, and they were like, "Read this book." So yeah. It was using that for like the evil, yeah. But and a lot of it stuck. But
or Think and Grow Rich, just like some kind of life instructions. Like I got no life instruction from my surroundings. Like my parents are.
Well, it was a different time. Also, it was just like, okay, you get up, you do this, you go to sleep. There's no joy.
Yeah, there's no joy, and I wasn't even doing those things. Like I cut school all the time. That's half the reason. They ended up kicking me out.
Right.
Because I was cutting. I just wouldn't go.
Yeah. So how did you end up in a rehab?
I kind of like went to confession almost. They had a counselor they had just recently hired, and
where at school?
At school.
No way.
Yeah, and they sent me to him because I had got in trouble for doing something, cutting class or something. And they're like, you need to go talk to this guy. And this guy started...
Like a school psychologist or
something?
Something
like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was basically, he started out by saying, everyone's saying drugs aren't the problem, it's people. And I was like, yeah. And drugs aren't the problem. And I started telling him, like, what I had done, like what I was doing. Like, oh, yeah, like I popped a pill then and I just got high, but I'm getting high because everyone else is the problem, not me. And, and certainly not the substances I'm taking to deal with these people. And he's like, yeah, okay, we're going to send you to rehab.
Oh, my God. He did the old, like, switcheroo.
Right, exactly. He wrote me in and then put me away. I think he was getting commission because he was sending a lot of kids to this rehab.
Right.
But I'm grateful that I went because even though I had no intentions of
Were you addicted
sober,
or were you just like...
it was going in that way. I wasn't functional. My life was definitely unmanageable.
Right.
And if I drank, I've always been a binge anything, you know? So if you put a drink in front of me, I'm not going to just have one. I'm going to have the bottle. But like what's going on underneath is like I wanted some excitement. I wanted to get out of myself, It wasn't like I woke up every morning and I needed it, but I was also 16. Who knows where I'd be, 10 years from then.
Right.
But I definitely drank to get drunk.
Sure.
There's no doubt about that. And but I also didn't have any intentions of stopping.
Right.
I just meant, like, when you go to rehab, you can either get sober or you can meet other cool people to party with, and that's pretty much what I did. Is I made other, friends outside of that suburban town I lived in.
Where was the rehab?
The rehab was in Philadelphia, like out on the outskirts of Philadelphia, and and I was there for maybe a month or two. I can't remember, but the seed was planted. The 12-step recovery, AA, 12 steps of AA was planted, and another way of living was planted, a solution. And that's
similar to what the guy, he was like talking to you in your language when he was saying, like, no, it's them. You're like,
yeah.
Exactly. No, I know what that's like. But especially when the light bulb goes off for like, I didn't even know there was another way.
Yeah. Who knew?
This was it. And everybody I was around, my world was getting smaller. And there was more people who were like that, Mm-hmm. So how'd you do in the rehab?
I passed with flying colors, Jared. I mean, I did not like it. I mean, back then, I don't know if they still do that, but like they took all my clothes away. I mean, they paid it was a horrible experience in a lot of ways because the clothes, but they really, they stripped you of your creativity. Like I knew that like me doing drugs and wearing makeup had nothing to do with each other. Like it's an art,
Right.
And now I'm old enough to say, looking back, like, yeah, I know I was not dressing like a punk rocker because I was on drugs. You know what I mean? Like that's a form of expression and a creative expression and, but they strip you of all that. And I remember I used to draw these pictures and the director of the rehab like took them and ripped them up.
Fuck.
Yeah, I mean it was like not cool, but
it's like a John Hughes film.
Yeah. It was the 80s, right?
Yeah.
That was my life. I was living in a John Hughes town and going to a John Hughes rehab, and good times. But yeah.
How'd you feel when you came home?
I actually felt good. I was surprised. Who knew? that being clean for, over 30 days actually manifests itself in like I felt much clearer. I felt good, but I don't think I didn't really equate that with being clean. I just kind of.
You thought you just took a break?
Yeah, like I just needed a break and now I feel good. Like, who knew? I didn't think that like one had anything to do with the other. And
what happened next?
I got together with a girlfriend that I met in rehab, and we went and we partied, and that was a wrap.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I really had no intentions of, because I didn't think that was a problem. I didn't get the second part of the first step, that I was powerless over, alcohol. I just got that my life was unmanageable. That was pretty obvious. And yeah, within a couple years, I did okay, like the first semester, I think, that of the school year, but then I started to get that antsiness, and I came to New York without my parents' permission, and I stayed this summer. And
could they not find you? Were you like a runaway, or you just like called them and say, "Hey, I'm over here, and I'll see you when I see you"?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't approve of it, but at this point, they had kind of given up, like there's no point. I wasn't going to listen to any rules. And yeah, so I came to New York, and my friend whose father lived in New York, he was paying for the apartment that we were staying in. So that was nice, but that was only for the first month, because then he came and saw our apartment, and he saw the junkies we were hanging out with and needles lying around. And I wasn't doing that stuff, but I was hanging out with people who were.
Yeah, you were next to it.
I was next to it, and yeah. And
how old were you?
I was 16 at this point, and it was in the East Village, 8th Street, right by Veselka's, back in '86.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy. And yeah, and then the father came and he put me on the train to go back, and I got right off that train and came back to New York, and kind of just bounced around on, people's friendly, the kindness of strangers. And it was, I was very lucky that nothing horrible happened to me, because I certainly put myself in situations where
the stage was set. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I had hung out there much longer, who knows? But I did come back when the school year started. I just wanted to
spread your wings.
Spread my wings during the summer,
with junkies in the East Village.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I can't even imagine. Like for me, sometimes, I talk about this a lot when I think about like my parents and even the struggles that I have with them now. But like I did stuff like that, and bro, I'm shocked they still even talk to me.
Yeah.
If I really think back, I'm like, dude, I was 16 years old, living outside of my house with another person, another woman, and I already had a kid. I already had a...
Oh, you had a kid at 16,
really?
Oh,
3 months before my 16th birthday, my son was born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's born January 22nd, 1995. So,
Wow.
that's how, but what I'm saying is that, similar, the unmanageability, but in that time, it was just yeah, I have a kid at this age. You're living with junkies.
Yeah. I mean, not living with them, but letting them in my...
Yeah, they're there.
They're there. They're hanging out.
But that's what I mean. It's just when you're caught in that life, you don't even know. It's just hey, whatever's next. You know, I'll make a friend. I can stay on the couch. I can do this. I can do that. And that's, that's how that happens.
Yeah. And not for nothing. This was right around the time of HIV and AIDS.
Sure.
And
that was the original virus, people.
Yeah.
Now people think it's corona. Oh, you got the virus? No, the virus was the virus.
Yeah, and there wasn't that information really that out there of sharing needles or just being there was
No, they said it was for gay people.
yeah, and
I have cousins that they had it and they were not gay.
right, exactly. It wasn't as publicized about the whole needle situation and
Sure.
whatnot, and like the risks that I took. Oh, you know, it's scary, but you know.
And you think when you're that age, like, you know, that you're so like grown. When I see like a junior high school kid now, I'm like, that kid's a fucking baby.
Yeah.
The book bag is bigger than him. I cannot imagine him drinking
Yeah.
a 64-ounce Old English with
Yeah.
the jug hand. But that's
Yeah.
what I was doing,
Yeah.
you know?
Or a bottle of vodka.
Right. Or
you
something
know.
like that. Yeah. Or just buying drugs from strangers. I talk about it all the
Yeah.
time. It's fucking crazy.
It is.
So
I always looked older when I was that age. And
Right. Well,
would
the
walk-
punk rock thing was.
Yeah, the makeup, whatever, and yeah, and also they were a lot more lenient back then. New York was like the Wild West. I mean, anything goes, and it was very easy to, you know, live an older lifestyle, even if I was only like 16.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I totally had that. I was buying beer and alcohol from any store when I was in the 8th grade. So was that 14, 15?
Yeah,
Yeah, they don't care.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's, you know, and I remember even when I would take the bus to Manhattan when I was young like that, because I was like what they call a bridge and tunnel kid.
yeah.
So I
sure.
lived, where I grew up was less than an hour ride on a bus to Midtown. So I would just.
You grew up like near Rochester?
No,
Or-
in Rockland County. It's
Rockland
like right
County.
across
Oh,
the
yeah,
river
yeah.
from Westchester. So we get on the bus. It goes right to Port Authority. I take the A train downtown, and then here we are. Now we're hanging out here. The fountain is off in the park, and everybody, you know, that was like a normal Tuesday,
Yeah.
you know, and everybody's doing whatever. But you know, back to you. So you get back home. And you have like all this experience, and now you're back in Slowpoke.
Exactly. Yeah, it was the. Well, what can I say? I
The
don't
bell
know.
rung.
I was just like waiting to get out, and
So what happened next?
when I would go back.
Yeah, when you got back home and you're like, oh, I don't want this life anymore.
Well, I think I never wanted that life in the suburbs. So, but I did, education. Like I did have some kind of moral compass, and I wanted to have an education. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to, do something with my life. I had aspirations, and so I did want to pass high school. And, I kind of had this attitude that, like, I didn't have to show up or work. And, like, somehow I would be handed a degree, or somehow they, like, life would show up for me, and not, like, I didn't have to actually put effort into it. And so when they kicked me out, like only a couple months before graduation, they're like, you don't have the credits you need to graduate. I was really devastated. So then I went through, I matriculated into college. It's kind of through the back door. Like I wasn't accepted, but
Yeah.
I was able to take courses. And if you take enough classes, you'll eventually get accepted. And I was on my own. For the first time in my life, my parents were supporting me, like really, letting me live in an apartment and just supporting me to take these classes. And
Where was the school?
in Philadelphia. Yeah, and I was having a hard time showing up for that. Like, I was taking nighttime classes, and I still couldn't show up for it. Like, I just couldn't do life, like the basics. It just seemed like I'd get a job, a part-time job, and I would be, I'd be stealing from them. And it was at a nightclub, and so they'd hook me up with drinks, and I had this whole scam with the doorman, and we'd be, taking money, and it was like everything was a hustle, like in a bad way, like
right.
a bad hustle. Like, instead of passing a class, I'd see if I could maybe date the teacher, like maybe if I just like batted my eyelashes, he would, let me pass, but that never really worked. Although I did once have a teacher ask me out after he gave me the C. And I was like, dude, you're giving me a C and you're still asking me out? Like, come on.
That's A. I need an A.
Like, you should have given me an A and maybe I would have gone out with you.
Right.
But yeah, so.
Yeah. So then, did you finish school?
So, what happened is, during that time when I realized how dysfunctional and unmanageable my life still was, in spite of having no parental control and being in the city, like, I realized, maybe those people in AA, they seem to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and
Had you gone to any meetings or just?
I'd visit meetings from time to time.
Visit.
Yeah, absolutely. Osmosis.
Yeah.
I can get what you guys have just by sitting there. I don't need to stop drinking. And eventually, that hole in your soul gets big enough and you feel suicidal and you're looking in the mirror and you're only 19 and you want to kill yourself when your life is just beginning. And you just, I had a willingness, and I guess that's, a spiritual experience that I hadn't had before, to try it another way.
Was it like something very specific, or just like a gradual bump into like okay, I'm ready?
The drinking wasn't working anymore.
Right.
That was another thing. Like, so the fun wasn't happening.
Yeah, you were drinking and still feeling.
Yeah, I was drinking and not having fun. I had nobody to blame. Like, I think up until then, I had just blamed everyone else for the state of my life, and I was running out of people to blame. Like, there was nobody else but me, and I didn't know how to live. Like, I just didn't know how to function. Like when people share their stories and they talk about how functional they were and they were still like getting fucked up, there was no two sides. It was very obvious. Like, there was only one Tapu and she was not doing so hot. And yeah, so I started coming to meetings, and I thought, well, maybe this time I'll go to meetings and not drink. I'll try it your way. And I'll try it for 90 days, which seemed like a very long time when the most you've ever gone is 2 weeks. So, there was a lot I couldn't identify with. I wasn't a daily drinker. Like I said, I was a binge drinker. But I tried, I heard, identify with the feelings. And I just kind of latched down to that. And I also immediately got into the literature, and I identified with the literature, and I felt like your body just feels so much different when you stop using and start going to meetings, and
you get like a different medicine.
A new medicine.
Because just not drinking is not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I think things get better even when you just stop drinking.
Oh,
like,
no,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. But like for me, like, the voices and everything was still there even without me drinking.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I was just like, and similar to you, a little bit at a time, I just kept surrendering more. And people hear this surrender like it's like some kind of woo thing. It's just like surrendering is like, let somebody else give you a suggestion.
Yeah.
And then maybe you take it. Like make the coffee or something that seemingly looks like it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? And you're
Right.
like, what do you mean I gotta fucking make the coffee? Like, yeah, it's the best thing for you. You come here and make the coffee. I want to be on step fucking 90.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, no, just make the coffee.
Yeah. And, you know, I they said to get a sponsor. I got two.
Yeah.
They didn't say just get one sponsor, so I just assumed, you know,
Right.
addict mentality. I'm like, I'm surprised I didn't get three, you know, like, because I got the woman who had on the outsides what I wanted, you know. She looked successful. She was, you know, I lived in a nice apartment and blah, 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 had the outsides. And then I got another one who, you know, is probably somebody I wouldn't even drink with, you know. And she didn't have the outsides that I normally gravitated towards at that time, but she was really good. She really helped me stay sober, and she really showed me that it's not about that. It's about the person. And that was a lesson, you know, that at that time, you know, I really needed to not be so judgmental, because when I'm that judgmental, the only thing I'm doing is hurting myself. I'm just isolating. I'm isolating myself from the world. And, you know, the walls needed to come down.
Even if it's like a little bit at a time, you know? Mm-hmm. Like first, like practicing that stuff with people in the program.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Before, like, it goes out to the real world, I'm like, oh, I don't like this fucking guy's face. I don't even know I don't like him, but I don't like your face. You know,
Exactly.
Meanwhile, like, you know, he became a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. So how did your life start to change as you got more and more into the program?
I started to have a ball. I started to have like a, you know, it was just younger people started to come into the rooms, and we just went around having a lot of sober fun. And that, I feel like I didn't have a childhood in a lot of ways. Like it wasn't fun. You know, but even the times that I'd come up to New York and have these crazy nights, at the end, I was still in a blackout, you know, or still something effed up would be happening. And, you know, I'd be putting myself in situations that I could have ended up dead. So, yeah, so for like the first time I was having clean, just fun, hanging out. You know, like I never done that before as a kid.
Yeah.
I joined some clubs, you know, I went to class, I learned stuff that I was interested in. I traveled, you know, I never had traveled before. I went to Italy. I studied in Italy for a month, and that was fun. And, yeah, it was just like, just being a kid, you know? It's just nice.
Nice to not have that cloud over you. Mm-hmm. You know, just like weighing you down, that no matter what it is, when you're in that cycle, it's not going to be enough. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people say, oh, how could you have gotten sober so young? You know, all I did was drink when I was that age. But it's like, I had already done that. Like, I had already gone through that phase, you know, the drinking and the going to clubs. Like, I did that when I was 12, you know? So I don't need to... And I still continue to go to some clubs with other sober people. I still like to dance and, you know, you know, so I would go for a purpose. Like I would really go to the clubs and be dancing with, and I usually brought other sober people with me, and we'd have a ball.
Yeah, I think, well, I know for me that there was, you know, by the time I got here, like there was nothing that could tempt me. Like no amount of like good time, quote unquote, could tempt me. I'm like, bro, what are you going to put on? How much Coke do you think you're going to put on the table? Like, you know, I did enough, and I know, you know, it's like, oh no, but you didn't do it here. I'm like, no, I did it there.
Yeah.
And I did, you know, all like it says in the literature, which I love. It's funny. I have you saved in my phone. It's like the most funniest thing for me. And
What?
oh my God, from the meeting that I met you at, look at what it says. It says Tapu Big Book Thumper, BB Thumper. No, which is good because like
I'm so not a BB.
No, I know, but I met you at that.
I
met you at that rebellion big book meeting. I saw.
Was a great meeting.
I saw you, and then I didn't see you for a whole year, and then I saw you again at the same meeting.
Oh, really?
That's how it happened.
But you didn't. You must not have been back at that meeting for a whole year.
No,
because that was like the only meeting that I was really going to on a regular basis.
Right, but even so, inside the literature, it says eventually all scorecards read 0. Like it doesn't matter. Like and then you have like, you had this other awakening, like that childlike awakening, where you're just like, hey man, I'm gonna go. I used to go to meetings with my friends, and I wasn't allowed. Not that I wasn't allowed out. I had responsibilities already. I got sober. My kid, he's probably 2 years away from shaving. But figuratively speaking. But I'd go to meetings, and sometimes when I would hang out after a meeting, which would only be once or twice a week, bro, I'd go ride the Cyclone, or go the bumper cars in Coney Island till 2 a.m.
Oh, I've been
like
there.
little baby shit. Like,
yeah.
But dude, there was no amount of drug or alcohol that could give me that sensation of just like, yeah, maybe I glutton like 4 slices of pizza or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like alive again, again. So when did you move to New York permanently?
So after I graduated,
college?
After I graduated college. I did graduate college.
No, so you stuck it all the way through, which is
I
great.
did.
You turned it around. Look at you.
Yeah, look at me. I did not. I will say that I did not graduate with great grades, because you often hear people say, "Oh, I got sober and then I got straight A's." No, I did not get straight. I did not get straight A's, but I did graduate. And it's really funny. Bill Cosby gave me my degree. So
shut up. Like in person?
Like in person, yeah. Because I went to Temple, and he's like the spokesperson. So
I used to be.
Yeah.
They probably took his degree back.
Exactly. But so that was my auspicious beginning, being handed my degree by a rapist. But whatever. So then I moved to New York about a year after I graduated. I kind of bumped around for a little bit and came to New York, and it was, I was temping. I was having a rough time, like just kind of getting settled.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, money wise. And I was, sleeping on people's, I was paying for it, but like I was doing one of those, like, can I rent your couch things, Right. And I had my cat with me the entire time, which I'm proud of, that I never gave her up. Never abandoned my cat. And yeah, so it was tough. I think my first year in New York, I moved like 6 times. It was crazy. But yeah. So then I never left. I ended up in Brooklyn Heights, and I always went to meetings. When you're going through stuff, the net of AA, the people in AA, catch you when you feel like you're falling. And that's what was happening. Like within the first 2 or 3 months, I was really hurting because I have like addictions with food as well. And I was really, really in that hell, struggling. 5 years sober, but didn't
the
feel
other things are showing up.
The other monkeys on my back are definitely making
taking the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And I went to an AA meeting, and I met someone who basically gave a food qualification at an AA meeting. And I went up to her and I asked her, like, what is she doing to get help with that? And she took me to that, and my journey with that began, and that was a miracle. Like, that needed to happen. And
Did you struggle with food your whole life?
I did. I mean, it did get worse, especially like after I got sober. You know, you put one thing down and another
What
thing
did I say?
pops
Put down the drink,
up.
pick up the fork?
Yeah, exactly. So I put down the drink. I picked up the fork big time. I mean, I can remember like giving a qualification and eating during my qualification, like not even thinking twice that there was anything weird about that.
Right.
And I can say to this day, I've never seen anyone eat while qualifying. I mean, it was a bag of nuts, but still,
yeah.
you know, it wasn't like I was having a full-on entree.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway, there was that, and where was I going with this? I felt like I can't.
Well, the thing is that just because just because you pour water on one thing,
Right.
and you were responsible enough to even say, look, this is also hurting me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you're sober, you're not numbing yourself. Like, you really feel the pain.
Everything, yeah.
So, like, you are going to pick up or you're going to get better.
Right.
Like, that's the thing about sober life is, like, you can't just stand still in that pain.
Now, when you got into the food program, what did you say it was?
Gray sheet.
Gray sheet. So when you get there, is it similar to like 12-step? They have meetings everywhere, and you go, all right.
It's 12 steps.
Did
No
you
sugar,
feel like, hey, oh my God, I found my people again?
Yeah, I did.
How good
I
did
did.
that feel?
It felt incredible. That's such a astute question, because that's like really what it feels like when you walk into a room when you've been suffering and you think that you're so alone and nobody has this issue like you have this issue. You know, they won't be able to relate, and you're alone in that pain, and it's suicidal. Like, for me, I had really dark thoughts, and when I walked into that room and I heard people share that they also were compulsively engaging in that behavior and could not stop, I was like, wow. Because none of my friends had that problem.
Right.
Like, all my girlfriends did not eat like me. So I really felt very alone, very
isolated?
alone with very isolated with that issue. Like, why can't you just stop? It's like, no.
Yeah, it's such a thing, It's such a thing because, people come to these programs and they live this life, and then they understand that, like, your vice is like a symptom. It's not your actual thing. Like, and, it's how you're numbing yourself in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've yet to have the food bug. I'm not saying that it's I'm not saying it's not on the table for me. In the last couple of years, I've even said to my lady, like, oh, I can understand why people throw up. And like, I never even thought or said that ever in my life. Like, just never, I always, because what happened was, and I didn't really know, but, you don't know until you know. Like, eventually, my life was manageable. All the things are in place. I have enough money in the bank. Chick is hot enough. This, up. All these things are there that I believe that I'm doing all this physical work to achieve those things. And now I got to do it for myself, and it ain't happening.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh no, I thought, because I always have like this self-esteem issue where, if I didn't look good, like I can be like, dude, I know that I'm fucking crazy in a lot of these other quirky ways, but at least I fucking look good, so I'll have something next to me, even if it's only for 6 months, until they smell the fucking madness,
Right.
you know. But then, like when that went away, and I had to face myself, you know, I would just be like, well, you know, it took some time, but I've been having those thoughts the last like maybe 6 months or so. Where like, you know, it's not at the moment, it's not in the cards for me, but I can see like how, you know, emotional eating for me. I'll be like we were saying before. Now I want to get down to the floor. When I want to feel low, I don't want to be a little bit. I want to be fucking like, you see, the world is.
Well, also I think that like the fact that you are able to acknowledge that, I mean, you don't have to go, like my food plan is not for everyone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying I'm this, what I'm on is this, like I'm the last house, the food plan I'm on is like the last house on the block, you know? That's where like you go when you've been, you know, you've
been
got
hurting
it.
yourself.
Yeah, for a long time. Like it's in your DNA, you know? But I think it sounds, you know, but lots of people ascribe to food plans that that aren't as rigorous as the one I'm on. Like, you know, maybe it's just a matter of finding, like maybe you just need to be on a histamine diet, you know, or maybe you need to just like eliminate this certain food or the way you prepare, or, you know what I mean? Like the food journey is, I think, a very individual one. For
but everyone. I also think it allowed me to get more educated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where I'm just like, okay, you know, because we were talking before the thing where, you know, I try to teach this stuff to my kids to control what we can control, which is sometimes, and I don't know anybody that can control their choices on their own. Everybody needs help, whether it's a friend, whether it's whatever. Like, there's very few people that I've ever met that are successful in happiness that are doing it on their own, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, I learned that for me, that the food has a direct relation to what I feel. So it's like, you know, not to get all science, but I learned a lot about the gut microbiome.
Absolutely.
And how it's related, how it's like that's like the Lincoln Tunnel to the brain.
Yeah.
And like it could just be.
I just recently learned about it too, like over the past few years.
Right, exactly. In the last few years of my life, where like now with the advent of more information being online and YouTube videos and this and that, and not like, oh, take this pill, you'll feel better. Like the diet, remember those diet fads and those diet pills of like the 80s and 90s? They were like amphetamines.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I remember.
And also the way we used to pop antibiotics. Like, oh, this is, you know, I'm feeling a sniffle. Let me take an antibiotic, you know, feel
what's
better.
A Z-Pack or something.
Right.
Yeah. I remember there was this movie. I forgot the name of it, man. Oh, my God. And either way, it's about junkies in Coney Island.
Oh.
Spun, I think.
The Warriors? No,
I wasn't going to say the Warriors. You're going old school. No, I think it was about, either way. But there was one of the characters was one of the kids' mom who was addicted to fucking diet pills. And like she would just sit in her house and eat them, and you could see the psychosis, and the fucking fridge was shaking, and the TV, and she was watching these things.
And steroids too. Men on this, you know, a lot of people started taking steroids like without knowing the consequences of how insane that can make you.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The thing is, you know, there's no easy way out.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it has to be earned. And even if it's just with being honest and being in a room with other people and saying, I feel like shit today and I did this to myself today, but I need help making it stop just for today, you know? And I've done that. So yeah, just educating myself a little bit. And I remember like, you know, one of my closest friends who's also been sober a gazillion years, right? she's a doctor and she does like hormone replacement therapy, right?
Oh, wow.
And all the
HRT.
she's fucking does everything, like for women, men, like, I didn't even know that women need testosterone. I didn't even know, but it's like, no, she's like real, like, so we go and she's like, yeah, first things first is we're gonna take your blood.
Yeah,
that's first things first, and we're gonna send it out and blah blah blah, and it comes back and it's like, we're going to do not just regular bullshit. We're going to do all these other tests.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, because sometimes it could be low iron.
It could be,
that I'm fucking like slugging around.
Exactly.
Not that everybody hates me. Not that,
right.
You know what I'm saying? But my brain will tell me it's all of that. And then I'll eat 11 bagels in a week and then it'll be even worse because now there's like a tire.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just saying, okay, maybe... And maybe it is just that. So anyway, so she comes back and she's like, look, I can she does like some of those, like the pellets. You know what those are?
Yeah.
Oh, she's fucking
Well, I actually recently, because I've been looking into pellets. That's funny, but go on. I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, I'll give you a number when we get off.
Yeah.
But anyway, because she does everything the right way. Because she was just like, she's like, yo, your T level's actually normal. You don't need it. It's just like, I said, if you want to get jacked or whatever, it's up to you. But I'm letting you know right now, it's not necessary. Like, if you needed it, I would tell you, but you don't need it.
Interesting.
Which was the opposite of my girl, because she's also 43, so her hormones are starting to fucking like get all whacked out, right? So she goes there. It's like, no, you low T. Wow. That's what she had after all the blood work.
Is she on testosterone pellets?
She took a pellet, yeah. And
because
it
I was
fucking
looking
helped her.
It
Unbelievable,
helped her?
yeah.
Interesting.
It helped her. I mean, and it wasn't like
it's not FDA approved.
I don't know what it is, to be honest.
No, I went down the YouTube rabbit hole with testosterone pellets,
right?
Because it had women do say that it's helped them. Like, I guess your girlfriend.
Right. Oh, because you know what it is? It's they. And I wish she was here because she'd go into the whole thing. It's the transmission of it, I think, has something to do why it's not approved, because they can't patent the transmission of putting it in a pellet, only like, or whatever.
Right.
It's like one of those like things where they have to figure out a way to make money, similar to like the legal weed thing. It's like,
oh, that makes sense.
It's like, okay, like not everybody knows, but people know, like, dude, you can go to Mexico and get those fucking stem cell injections, or Panama, or like those places where there's not, people think it's like so unregulated, but it's like, no, they're, like big, trust me, when Pfizer figures out a way to make the money, it's going to be available. It's going to be on 7th Avenue in Park Slope. So like they haven't figured that out, but like the science is there where like, they take, those very young cells. People are like, oh, umbilical cord, and they think you're like killing babies to make the cell. It's like all this other shit, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
But like, so these things are available for us, and as a
it's
sober,
hard to find. I was Googling it and looking for. I'm glad this is crazy that we're having this conversation, because I was really looking into where can I get these pellets. I even asked my gynecologist, like, where are these pellets? You're supposed to tell me what to do. And she's like, I never even heard of these pellets.
No way, no. This, I mean, she is on the. I'm gonna now. She's gonna get a free ad, but it's only because she's like my fucking sister.
Yeah,
and she's everything. Hold on.
Yeah, definitely give her a shout out.
Yeah, she's gotten so many already. Okay, well, the phone number is 718-400-8840. Dr. Rebecca Brown. She's amazing, over in Park Slope. Yeah, she's the one. Hormone replacement therapy, but like the right way, like with with love.
Yeah.
Like she was like straight up to me, like, dog, you don't need this shit.
That's
She's
great.
like, you're my homeboy. I'm not gonna tell you not to do whatever, because their job is to like level you out.
Yeah.
And that's what she did, like with my girl. Like my girl took a pellet, and it was real, man. It's like an incision. They put it in there and they close, but it's not like it goes into your body in a natural way over 6 months.
Right.
So you're not going to be like.
They do it in Europe.
Yeah.
Like why are all these why are all these medicines okay in Europe but like not okay in the US, and when they've been proven to help people. Now, I'm not endorsing, I'm not taking, I don't know anything about the pellets really, even though I've tried to find, it's like this big secret. The thing is, it just feels like alternative medicine sometimes. Feels like
not.
a secret, and
science.
it shouldn't be. Yeah.
No, it's similar to like, okay, well, how come they can do that there and we can't? But like, we can do all the fucking preservatives that we want over here, all the poison.
Right.
And they can't, one of my boys was in France. He's like, dog, you don't eat that bread in 2 days. It's over. Because they don't have all those chemicals in there. It's going to hold the bread for 3 months in your cupboard that you're eating, Yeah. But all of these things go in. It's like once I got sober and once I got into getting help, then my mind became open. That was like, just like you said, like the first place you went was AA, and then you end up in the food thing. And then, I told you I went to Debtors Anonymous. It was like AA was the first place where I was like, okay, maybe I don't have all the answers.
Right.
And maybe somebody can help me.
Exactly.
And that's what I needed in my life. Everywhere.
Just open to the concept that maybe I don't know everything because this is not working out. My show is not working out.
Right.
And recovery just like brings in that possibility, and then it just branches. Once you get started, it just keeps on branching out because other monkeys usually show up.
Yeah, and I think that's the, that's the gift. The gift is like, okay, what did I say? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness.
Yeah.
And just the open-mindedness is everything. Because you know what? If I know that if I will keep going for those, the blood tests, every year, whatever, every 2 years. And if I need testosterone, I'm going to take it. And I'm not going to feel like ashamed about taking it, because I'm like, dude, like, I'm not taking it to get all jacked. I'm taking it so that way I can level off and be like a human being, because hormones are freaking real.
Yeah, no, it's a real thing. And I don't know why there isn't more information, legitimate information about it. It's kind of... And why isn't it under health insurance? Like a lot of it.
Oh, yeah, you got to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, it's all paid out of pocket. Like they don't even, whatever. That's like a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's a whole nother thing.
But yeah.
Either way, look, it was fantastic having you on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, you know where to find us. Spiritual Experience on Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Stitcher or something or whatever. I'm sorry if I'm disrespecting anybody who listens to those things. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, peace.